The ink on the divorce papers wasn't even dry when Marcus let out a laugh that chilled the entire conference room. He looked at his wife of 5 years, Elena, not with pity but with pure, unfiltered triumph. He had won. He had the company, the millions, and the younger mistress waiting in the lobby. He thought Elena was nothing more than the dusty stepping stone he had used to climb to the top. He smirked as she capped her pin, thinking he had stripped her of everything. But he didn't know that the black SUV pulling up to the curb outside didn't belong to an Uber. It belonged to the most powerful family in New York, and they weren't here for him. They were here to bow to her. The air conditioning in the conference room of Blackwood & Associates was set to a freezing 65 degrees, but that wasn't why Elena shivered. She sat on one side of the mahogany table, her hands folded neatly in her lap, looking at the man she had vowed to love until death parted them. Apparently, a net worth of $50 million was effective enough to do the parting long before death arrived. Marcus Sterling sat opposite her. He looked impeccable. He was wearing a bespoke navy suit from Savile Row, the kind Elena had encouraged him to buy when his tech startup Nebula Systems finally went public last month. His hair was gelled back, his jawline sharp, and his blue eyes were devoid of any warmth. Next to him sat his lawyer, a shark of a man named Andrew Blackwood, and in a display of absolute disrespect, Jessica. Jessica was 22, a brand ambassador for Marcus's company, and currently the woman clinging to Marcus's arm like a decorative accessory. She popped a piece of gum, scrolling through her phone, occasionally glancing at Elena with a look of bored superiority. "Let's wrap this up," Marcus said, checking his Patek Philippe watch, a gift Elena had saved for 2 years to buy him for his 30th birthday. "I have a reservation at Le Bernardin in an hour. This doesn't need to take all day, Elena." Elena took a slow breath. "I'm not trying to delay you, Marcus. I just want to understand the clause regarding the house." Marcus let out a short, sharp scoff. He leaned forward, his cologne, a scent she used to associate with safety, now smelling cloying and arrogant. "The house." Marcus laughed a cruel sound. "Elena, be realistic. You can't afford the property taxes on the Hamptons estate, let alone the upkeep. I'm doing you a favor by buying you out. The settlement Andrew has drawn up is more than generous for someone who contributed so little." Elena felt the sting of tears but refused to let them fall. "Contributed so little," she whispered. "Marcus, I worked double shifts at the diner for 4 years so you could code in the garage. I paid for the servers. I paid for the incorporation fees. I edited your pitch decks." "Administrative work," Jessica chimed in, not even looking up from her phone. "My assistant does that. It's not exactly CEO material, is it?" Marcus smirked, squeezing Jessica's hand. "She's right, Elena. You were great for the struggle phase. You're a survivor. But Nebula is a global entity now. I need a partner who understands that world, who fits the image. Look at you." He gestured vaguely at her outfit. Elena was wearing a simple gray cardigan and black slacks. It was neat, clean, but it wasn't designer. It wasn't flashy. It was the clothing of a woman who had spent 5 years putting every spare dollar into her husband's dream rather than her own wardrobe. "You're small town, Elena," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a patronizing tone. "And that's fine. But I've outgrown the small town. I'm offering you a clean break. $200,000. Take it, sign the papers, and go back to whatever it is you do. Waitressing, knitting." Andrew Blackwood slid the thick document across the table. "It's a non-negotiable offer, Mrs. Sterling. If you contest it, we will tie this up in litigation for years. Given Mr. Sterling's resources and your lack thereof, you will likely bankrupt yourself within 6 months." It was a threat, plain and simple. Elena looked at the papers. $200,000. It was a lot of money to some, but compared to the $50 million Marcus had just secured, money built on the foundation of her sacrifice, it was an insult. It was hush money. She looked at Marcus one last time, searching for a trace of the man who used to cry in her arms when investors turned him down, the man who swore that if they ever made it, they would see the world together. That man was dead. The man in front of her was a stranger, consumed by greed and ego. "Fine," Elena said softly. Her voice didn't waver. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. He had expected a fight. He had wanted a fight, perhaps to validate his narrative that she was a screeching, unreasonable burden. Her calm unsettled him for a flickering second. "Just like that?" Marcus asked, his eyes narrowing. "Just like that," Elena replied. "If you think I'm worth so little, then I don't want to be part of your life anymore. The money isn't why I stayed, Marcus. And it's not why I'm leaving." "Save the moral high ground speeches," Jessica muttered, finally putting her phone down. "Just sign so we can get champagne." Elena picked up the pen. It was a cheap plastic promotional pen from the law firm. It felt light in her hand. Scratch, scratch, scratch. She signed her name, Elena Marie Sterling. It was over. As soon as the pen lifted from the paper, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Marcus exhaled loudly, a sound of exaggerated relief, and leaned back in his leather chair, lacing his fingers behind his head. "Finally," he groaned. "Andrew, file that immediately. I want the divorce decree finalized by the end of the week. I have a press junket in Tokyo next month, and I want to go as a single man." "Consider it done, Mr. Sterling," Blackwood said, scooping up the documents as if they were holy scripture. Marcus stood up, buttoning his jacket. He looked at Elena, who was still sitting staring at her hands. He felt a surge of pity mixed with disgust. She looked so small, so defeated. "Look," Marcus said, pulling a money clip from his pocket and peeling off a few $100 bills. He tossed them onto the table in front of her. They fluttered down like dead leaves. "For a cab, and maybe a new outfit, you look like you're going to a funeral." Jessica giggled, standing up and linking her arm through Marcus's. "Babe, you're too generous. She'll probably spend it on cat food." Elena slowly raised her eyes. She didn't look at the money. She looked directly at Marcus. There was no anger in her eyes anymore, only a chilling, hollow indifference. "You really think you made yourself, don't you, Marcus?" she asked quietly. "I know I did," Marcus sneered. "I wrote the code. I closed the deals. You just kept the coffee pot warm." "Enjoy Tokyo," Elena said, standing up. She didn't touch the cash on the table. She grabbed her worn leather purse, a gift from her late father, and turned toward the door. "Oh, I will," Marcus called after her. "And Elena, don't try to contact me when the money runs out. You signed the NDA. You're the past. Stay there." Elena didn't look back. She walked out of the glass-walled conference room, down the plush hallway, lined with abstract art that cost more than her parents' house, and pressed the button for the elevator. Her heart was pounding not from heartbreak, but from a strange adrenaline-fueled release. The shackles were off. For years she had played the role of the supportive wife, dampening her own light so Marcus wouldn't feel threatened. She had hidden her intelligence, her connections, and her true history, because Marcus had been so insecure about his humble beginnings. He wanted to be the savior. He wanted to be the alpha. So she had let him. But he had broken the covenant. He had mistaken her humility for weakness. The elevator dinged. Elena stepped inside. As the doors closed, she saw Marcus and Jessica coming out of the conference room, laughing, celebrating their victory. Elena closed her eyes and exhaled. "You have no idea," she thought. The elevator descended 40 floors. With every floor that passed, Elena felt lighter. By the time she reached the lobby, her posture had changed. She wasn't the hunched, defeated wife anymore. She stood tall, her shoulders back, her chin raised. She walked across the marble floor of the lobby. The security guard, a man named Henry, she had chatted with many times while waiting for Marcus, nodded to her. "Rough day, Mrs. Sterling?" Henry asked kindly. "Actually, Henry," Elena smiled, and it was a genuine, dazzling smile that made Henry blink in surprise. "It's the best day of my life. And please call me Elena. Just Elena." She pushed through the revolving doors and stepped out onto the busy Chicago sidewalk. The wind was biting, blowing off the lake, but it felt cleansing. She stood on the curb waiting. She wasn't waiting for a taxi. She wasn't waiting for an Uber. Moments later, Marcus and Jessica burst out of the building. They were loud, obnoxious, demanding attention. The valet was scrambling to bring Marcus's bright red Ferrari around. "There she is," Marcus mocked, spotting Elena standing a few feet away. "Waiting for the bus." "Elena, I think there's a stop 2 blocks down." Jessica laughed. "God, it's pathetic. Marcus, let's just go. The sight of her is depressing me." Marcus smirked, jingling his keys as the Ferrari pulled up. "Just soaking it in, Jess. The smell of success versus the smell of mediocrity." He was about to step toward his car when the atmosphere on the street suddenly changed. Traffic stopped. Horns didn't honk. They went silent. Turning the corner was a convoy. Not just any cars. 3 massive blacked-out Cadillac Escalades with government-grade tinting flanking a silver Rolls-Royce Phantom. Flags were mounted on the fenders of the Rolls-Royce, not national flags, but a family crest, a crest of gold and crimson. The convoy moved with predatory precision, cutting through the traffic and pulling up directly in front of the building, blocking Marcus's Ferrari. "Hey!" Marcus shouted, waving his hand. "You're blocking me, and move it!" The doors of the Escalades flew open in perfect synchronization. 6 men in black suits, wearing earpieces and clearly carrying concealed weapons, stepped out. They didn't look like mall cops. They moved like Secret Service agents. They instantly formed a perimeter on the sidewalk, pushing pedestrians back, creating a secure zone. Marcus froze. He was rich, but he wasn't this rich. This was head of state energy. This was old money power. "What is going on?" Jessica whispered, clutching Marcus's arm. Her previous arrogance replaced by confusion. "Is it a movie star?" The rear door of the silver Rolls-Royce opened. The chauffeur, a man in a pristine gray uniform, stood rigid as a woman stepped out. A collective gasp went through the crowd that had gathered. It was Sophia Kensington. Everyone knew the face. Sophia Kensington was the sole heiress to the Kensington steel and shipping empire. She was American royalty. Her family practically built Chicago. She was a regular on the cover of Forbes and Vogue, known for her icy demeanor and her ruthless business tactics. She was worth billions, not millions. Marcus's jaw dropped. "Holy," he muttered. "That's Sophia Kensington. Maybe she's here for Blackwood. Maybe she needs a lawyer." He immediately puffed out his chest. If he could introduce himself, if he could just get a handshake, imply a connection, it would boost his stock price by 10% overnight. He took a step forward, putting on his best charming smile. "Ms. Kensington," he called out, his voice cracking slightly. "Marcus Sterling, CEO of Nebula Systems. Huge admirer." Sophia didn't even blink. She didn't look at him. To her, he was as significant as a pigeon on the sidewalk. She scanned the area, her eyes intense, searching. Then her gaze landed on the woman standing quietly by the curb in the gray cardigan. Sophia's icy expression shattered. A look of pure, overwhelming emotion broke across her face. Relief, joy, adoration. "Elena!" Sophia cried out. Before Marcus could process what was happening, the billionaire heiress ran in her Louboutins across the pavement. She didn't shake Elena's hand. She didn't nod politely. Sophia Kensington threw her arms around Elena, burying her face in Elena's neck, hugging her with a desperation that shocked everyone watching. "I found you," Sophia sobbed, her voice amplified by the silence of the stunned crowd. "Oh my God, Elena, I finally found you." Marcus felt like he had been punched in the gut. The air left his lungs. He blinked rapidly, trying to make the image in front of him make sense. His ex-wife, the woman he had just mocked for being small town, the woman he thought was destined for a life of mediocrity, was currently being embraced by one of the most powerful women on the planet. And Elena wasn't pulling away. She wasn't confused. Elena smiled a soft, sad smile and patted the heiress on the back. "Hello, Sophie," Elena said, using a nickname that no reporter had ever dared to use. "I told you not to make a scene." Sophia pulled back, gripping Elena's shoulders. She looked at Elena's worn clothes, her tired eyes, and her lack of jewelry. A flash of fury crossed the heiress's face, but she suppressed it, focusing only on Elena. "We've been looking for you for 5 years," Sophia said, her voice trembling. "Ever since you vanished from the academy. Grandfather is sick, Elena. He's been asking for you. He won't sign the succession papers until he sees you. He says the empire belongs to the one who saved it." "I didn't save anything," Elena said softly. "I just did what was right." "You saved me," Sophia insisted, tears streaming down her face. "And then you disappeared. Why did you hide here? Why did you—" She glanced around at the generic office building, and then her eyes landed on Marcus, who was standing there with his mouth open. Sophia's eyes narrowed into slits of diamond-hard ice. She possessed an intellect that could dismantle corporations in minutes. It took her only a second to read the situation. She saw the lawyer's office behind them. She saw the younger woman on Marcus's arm. She saw the smugness draining from Marcus's face, replaced by fear. "Is this him?" Sophia asked, her voice dropping to a dangerous octave. "Is this the man you left everything for, the one you gave up your inheritance to support?" Elena sighed, stepping back. "It doesn't matter anymore, Sophie. It's over. We just signed the papers." "He divorced you?" Sophia asked, incredulous. "I wasn't CEO material." Elena quoted, a dry humor in her voice. Sophia slowly turned her body toward Marcus. The security detail shifted, sensing their employer's aggression. Marcus swallowed hard. He tried to salvage the situation. He was a salesman, after all. "Ms. Kensington," Marcus stammered, stepping forward again, though he kept a safe distance from the bodyguards. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Elena is... well, she's just my ex-wife. She was a waitress when I met her. I'm not sure how you know her, but—" "Silence," Sophia said. She didn't shout. She just spoke the word with such absolute authority that Marcus's mouth snapped shut. Sophia walked toward him. She was shorter than Marcus, but she loomed over him like a giant. She looked him up and down, analyzing him like a bug under a microscope. "You think she was a waitress?" Sophia asked, a cruel smile touching her lips. "You idiot! You monumental, colossal idiot!" I don't understand," Marcus stuttered. Jessica had released his arm and was backing away, sensing that being near Marcus was currently a liability. "Elena didn't want me to tell anyone," Sophia said, loud enough for the gathering crowd and the paparazzi who had just arrived on scooters to hear. "She wanted to make it on her own. She wanted to be loved for who she was, not what she came from. So she walked away from her trust fund. She walked away from her title." "Title," Marcus whispered. "Elena isn't just my best friend," Sophia announced. "She is Elena Marie Sterling, formerly Elena Marie Vanderquilt." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. Vanderquilt. It was an old name, a private name. A family that owned half of the real estate in Europe and had silent shares in nearly every major bank in the Western world. They were wealthier than the Kensingtons. They were the kind of rich that didn't appear on lists because they owned the people who made the lists. "No," Marcus breathed. That's impossible. Her parents. They were factory workers in Ohio." "Foster parents," Elena corrected from behind Sophia. Her voice was strong now. "Wonderful people who loved me when my own family was too busy fighting over shares to notice I existed. When I turned 18, I gained access to my accounts, but I didn't touch them. I wanted a real life. I met you, Marcus. And I thought I found someone who loved me for me." She shook her head. "I was wrong." Sophia stepped back to stand beside Elena. "You traded a diamond for a piece of glass," Sophia told Marcus. "And you have no idea the war you just started." Sophia turned to one of her security guards. "Get her bag. Put it in the car." "Yes, ma'am." "Wait!" Marcus panicked. His mind was racing. If Elena was a Vanderquilt, That meant he had just divorced a woman worth billions for a settlement of $200,000. He had just thrown away the ultimate connection. Elena, wait. Marcus pushed past a bodyguard who shoved him back effortlessly. Baby, listen. We can talk about this. I was stressed. The business. The pressure. I didn't mean it. Let's just tear up the papers. We can fix this. Elena paused at the door of the Rolls-Royce. She looked back at Marcus, who was now sweating, his hair disheveled, looking pathetic and desperate. You signed the papers, Marcus, Elena said. You wanted a clean break. You got it. But I love you, Marcus screamed, ignoring Jessica, who was staring at him in horror. I still love you. Elena laughed. It was a light, free sound. No, Marcus, you love money, and you just realized you lost the biggest bank account in the world. She slid into the back seat of the Rolls-Royce. Sophia followed her, pausing only to look at Marcus one last time. Oh, and Mr. Sterling, Sophia said. My family owns the majority stake in the server farms that host Nebula Systems. Expect a termination of service notice by the morning. Good luck finding a new host for your platform. The door slammed shut. The convoy peeled away, leaving Marcus standing on the curb, the wind whipping his expensive suit, while onlookers filmed his humiliation on their phones. Jessica looked at him, then at the disappearing cars. She looked at the Ferrari. You're going to lose your servers, she asked, her voice shrill. Shut up, Jessica, Marcus snapped, running a hand through his hair. I need to call Andrew. I need to undo this. If you lose the servers, the stock crashes. Jessica said, the math clicking in her head. You'll be ruined. I said shut up, Jessica scoffed. She pulled her arm away as he tried to grab her. I think I'll take an Uber. Call me when you fix this. If you fix this. She walked away, leaving Marcus completely alone. But the nightmare was only just beginning. The drive back to the Nebula Systems headquarters was a blur of panic for Marcus. He sat in the driver's seat of his Ferrari, gripping the leather steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. He had tried to call Andrew Blackwood 6 times. Each time it went to voicemail. When he finally screeched into the private parking garage of his building, he didn't bother to park properly. He left the car straddling 2 spots and sprinted toward the elevator. His phone buzzed. It was a notification from Bloomberg. Breaking: Kensington Logistics pulls contracts from Nebula Systems. Stock tumbles 12% in after-hours trading. No, Marcus hissed, stabbing the elevator button. It's just a scare tactic. I can fix this. I'm the CEO. I'm the visionary. But when the elevator doors opened on the top floor, the scene was apocalyptic. Usually the Nebula offices were a temple of hushed productivity programmers tapping away on mechanical keyboards, soft ambient music playing, the smell of artisanal coffee in the air. Today it was a riot. People were shouting. Phones were ringing off the hook, a cacophony of landlines that hadn't been used in months. Marcus stormed into the main pit. Why is everyone panicking? Get back to work. His VP of operations, a frantic man named David, ran up to him, sweating through his shirt. Marcus, where have you been? The dashboard is red. All of it. What do you mean red? The servers, David yelled over the noise. Kensington didn't just pull their contract, they own the physical data centers in Virginia where we host our cloud. They pulled the plug, literally. They cut the power to our racks 5 minutes ago. They can't do that, Marcus screamed. We have an SLA. We have a contract. Read the fine print, David shouted back, losing his patience with his boss. There's a force majeure clause, and apparently the Kensington family is the force majeure. We are dark, Marcus. The app is down. The website is down. Clients can't access their data. Marcus felt the room spin. He stumbled toward his glass-walled office, the same place where he had felt like a god just hours ago. He looked at his computer screen. It was black. Fix it, Marcus roared, turning back to the room. Migrate the data to AWS. Move it to Google Cloud. Just do it. We can't. A lead engineer stood up, looking terrified. The encryption keys for the migration. They were managed by the system admin account. So use the admin account. We don't have the password, Marcus, the engineer cried. Elena had it. The room went silent. Marcus froze. What? Elena, the engineer repeated. She set up the security protocols 4 years ago when we couldn't afford a CTO. She managed the master keys. She said she wrote them down in the physical ledger in the safe, but the safe is empty. Marcus's blood ran cold. He remembered the safe. He remembered seeing Elena cleaning it out yesterday. He had laughed at her asking if she was stealing staplers. She hadn't been stealing staplers. She had been taking back her intellectual property. Call her, David said, his voice trembling. Marcus, you have to call her. If we don't get those keys in the next hour, the data corruption will be irreversible. We'll be liable for billions in damages. Marcus pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He dialed the number he had deleted from his favorites list only that morning. Ring, ring, ring. Hello. The voice was calm, serene. It was Elena. Elena. Marcus barked, sweat dripping down his forehead. Give me the codes. The system is down. We're losing millions by the second. There was a pause on the other end. He could hear soft classical music in the background and the clinking of fine china. Who is this? Elena asked pleasantly. It's Marcus. Stop playing games. Give me the master encryption key for the server migration. Oh, Marcus. Elena sighed. I'm afraid I can't do that. You see, that sounds like technical support. And as you and Jessica pointed out during the settlement meeting, I was merely responsible for administrative work and keeping the coffee pot warm. I wouldn't know anything about encryption keys. That sounds like CEO material. Elena, please, Marcus begged, his voice cracking. They are going to sue me. The company will die. I signed the NDA, Marcus. Elena said, her voice dropping to a whisper that cut deeper than a scream. And I signed the divorce decree. I have no legal obligation to Nebula Systems anymore. You wanted a clean break. You wanted me out of your business. Well, I'm out. I'll pay you, Marcus shouted. I'll give you $1 million, $5 million. I don't need your money, Marcus, she replied. I'm currently having tea with the Duke of Westminster. He says hello, by the way. Click. She hung up. Marcus stared at the phone. He looked up at his employees, the people he had led with arrogance and bluster. They were all looking at him with a mixture of fear and contempt. They knew. They realized that the quiet woman who used to bring in donuts and fix the printer was the one holding the entire architecture together, and Marcus had fired her. Just then the glass door to his office swung open. It wasn't an engineer, it wasn't a client, it was the SEC. 3 agents in windbreakers marked Federal Agent walked in. Marcus Sterling, the lead agent asked. Marcus slumped into his chair. Yes. We've received a tip regarding financial irregularities and inflating user numbers in your IPO filing, the agent said. We have a warrant to seize all electronic devices. Marcus watched as they began unplugging the computers. The tip. It had to be her. Or Sophia. Or the Vanderquilts. It didn't matter. The avalanche had started, and he was at the bottom of the mountain without a shovel. 3 days later, the social calendar of New York City was focused on one singular event, the Vanderquilt Centennial Gala. It was the most exclusive event of the decade held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The guest list was a roll call of world leaders, tech moguls, and old aristocracy. For years, the Vanderquilts had been reclusive, their vast fortune managed by proxies. But tonight the rumors were swirling that the lost granddaughter, the heir to the empire, had returned. Inside the great hall of the Met, the atmosphere was electric. Champagne flowed like water. The air smelled of expensive perfume and lilies. Marcus stood outside the velvet ropes, shivering in the cold. His assets had been frozen pending the SEC investigation. The Ferrari had been impounded. Jessica had left him the moment the credit card stopped working, blocking his number, and selling her story to a tabloid for $50,000. He was wearing his tuxedo, but it felt like a costume now. He looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes. He wasn't on the list. He had tried to name drop, tried to bribe the bouncer with the watch off his wrist, but the security was impenetrable. Kensington security. "Please," Marcus pleaded with the clipboard-holding attendant. "I just need to speak to her. 5 minutes. Tell her it's Marcus." The attendant looked at him with a sneer. "Mr. Sterling, we have strict instructions. You are persona non grata. If you do not leave, the police will be called." "Look, I'm her husband. Well, ex-husband. Move along, sir." Marcus didn't leave. He stood in the shadows of a pillar watching the arrivals. He watched the limousines deposit billionaires who he used to think were his peers. He realized now he had been playing in a sandbox while they owned the beach. Then the hush descended. A vintage Rolls-Royce Phantom 4, the kind used by royalty, pulled up. The crowd of paparazzi went silent, sensing the moment. The door opened. First came Sophia Kensington, looking sharp and fierce in a crimson pantsuit. She stopped and offered her hand to the person inside. Elena stepped out. Marcus stopped breathing. Gone was the woman in the gray cardigan. Gone was the hunch, the apology in her stance. Elena was wearing a gown that looked like it was woven from starlight, a deep midnight blue silk that hugged her figure and trailed behind her in a dramatic train. But it was the jewelry that made the crowd gasp. Around her neck sat the Vanderquilt star, a 100-carat sapphire surrounded by diamonds that hadn't been seen in public since 1950. She looked regal. She looked powerful. She looked breathtaking. On her arm was a man, not just any man. It was Julian Thorne. Julian was everything Marcus wanted to be. He was the CEO of Titan Global, Marcus's biggest competitor, and a man known for his ruthless charm and old money connections. He was tall, with dark hair and a jawline that could cut glass. He looked at Elena not with possession, but with awe. "Oh my God," Marcus whispered. Elena paused on the red carpet. She turned toward the cameras. She didn't shy away. She smiled a smile of total confidence. A reporter shouted, "Ms. Vanderquilt, is it true you've been living as a waitress for 5 years?" Elena stopped. The microphones thrust forward. "It is true," Elena said, her voice clear and melodious. "I wanted to understand the world from the ground up. I learned more about dignity, hard work, and loyalty serving coffee than I ever did in a boardroom. And I learned who truly values people and who only values status." "Are you referring to your recent divorce?" another reporter yelled. Elena laughed softly. "I don't look back at mistakes. I'm focused on the future. I'm taking my seat on the board of Vanderquilt Industries tomorrow. And," she glanced at Julian, who squeezed her hand, "I'm exploring new partnerships." Julian leaned into the mic. "And let me add, Titan Global is honored to be partnering with the Vanderquilt estate to acquire the assets of a certain failing tech startup that recently lost its server hosting. We plan to restructure it properly." He winked. Marcus felt his knees give out. They were buying him out. They were going to pick the carcass of Nebula Systems for pennies on the dollar. Julian, his rival, and Elena, his wife. Elena turned to walk up the stairs. As she reached the top, she stopped. She seemed to sense eyes on her. She looked past the flashing lights, past the guards, directly into the shadows where Marcus was hiding. She didn't wave. She didn't smirk. She simply looked at him with a profound, terrifying pity. It was the look one gives to a roadkill. Then she turned and vanished into the gala, leaving Marcus alone in the cold, realizing that he hadn't just lost a wife. He had lost the world. Desperation makes people do stupid things. And Marcus Sterling was a desperate man. 2 weeks after the gala, he sat in a small, cramped office of a strip mall lawyer. Andrew Blackwood had fired him as a client, citing a conflict of interest and likely fearing the Vanderquilt wrath. Now Marcus was represented by Saul Goodman's less competent cousin, a man named Barry. "We have a case," Marcus insisted, slamming his hand on Barry's cheap laminate desk. "It's fraud. She defrauded me." Barry adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Sterling, you signed a settlement, a very specific one." "She hid assets," Marcus yelled. "She didn't disclose she was a Vanderquilt. If I had known she was worth billions, I would have demanded half. That's marital property. Well, Barry muttered, technically inheritance is usually separate property, but if she commingled funds, maybe but suing the Vanderquilts, they'll bury us in paperwork. I don't care, Marcus screamed. I have nothing left. The company is in receivership. The SEC froze my accounts. I'm living in a motel. I need to sue her for spousal support. She can afford it. He filed the suit. Sterling v. Vanderquilt. Ideally, he wanted $50 million. The court date was set remarkably fast. Marcus thought it was a sign of luck. He didn't realize it was because Elena wanted this over with. The courtroom was packed. The press was there, hungry for the spectacle of the fallen tech bro suing the heiress. Marcus walked in wearing a suit that hadn't been dry cleaned in weeks. He sat at the plaintiff's table with Barry, who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Then the doors opened. Elena entered. She wasn't wearing a ball gown this time. She wore a sharp white suit that made her look like a modern-day avenging angel. She was flanked by a legal team that cost more per hour than Marcus's entire company was currently worth. She sat down calm and composed. She didn't even look at him. The judge, an older woman with a stern face, looked over the files. Mr. Sterling, the judge began, you are petitioning to annul the divorce settlement on the grounds of non-disclosure of assets. Yes, Your Honor. Marcus stood up, trying to regain his old bravado. She lied. She pretended to be poor. She deceived me for 5 years. I supported her. I paid the rent. I bought the groceries. Now she's a billionaire, and she left me with nothing. The judge looked at Elena. Ms. Vanderquilt. Elena's lead lawyer stood up. Your Honor, Mr. Sterling's claim is that he was unaware of my client's background. However, we have evidence that Mr. Sterling not only rushed the divorce proceedings but explicitly waived the discovery process. The lawyer held up a document. Exhibit A. The transcript of the settlement meeting. Mr. Sterling states, and I quote, I don't care what she has. She has nothing. Just get her to sign. He also forced my client to sign a document stating that both parties were satisfied with their own financial knowledge of the other. I didn't know she was an heiress, Marcus shouted. Furthermore, the lawyer continued, ignoring the outburst, Mr. Sterling claims he supported her. We have bank records here proving that for the first 3 years of their marriage, the household expenses were paid from a joint account. The deposits into that account came primarily from EMV Trust, Elena Marie Vanderquilt. She was anonymously injecting money into the household to pay his rent while he built his company. A gasp went through the courtroom. Elena stood up slowly. May I speak, Your Honor? You may, the judge said. Elena turned to Marcus. I didn't hide who I was to trick you, Marcus. I hid it to protect myself from people like you. People who see a dollar sign instead of a human being. And you proved me right, every single day. She took a step closer to the bar. You say I deceived you. You cheated on me with your brand ambassador in our bed. You belittled my intelligence in front of your employees. You cast me aside the moment you got a taste of success. You didn't want a partner, Marcus. You wanted a fan, and now that the fan is the one holding the checkbook, you want to be a partner again. She looked at the judge. He wanted a clean break. He valued me at $200,000. I simply accepted his valuation. The judge looked at Marcus with undisguised disgust. Mr. Sterling, you are a sophisticated businessman. You had legal counsel. You drafted the agreement. You forced the agreement. You cannot come to this court asking for a do-over simply because you realized you made a bad deal. The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot in the silent room. Case dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, Mr. Sterling, you are ordered to pay the defendant's legal fees. Legal fees, Marcus choked. Elena's lawyers cost thousands an hour. I can't pay that, I'm bankrupt. Then I suggest you get a job, the judge said dryly. I hear they are hiring down at the diner. Laughter erupted in the courtroom. Elena gathered her things. As she walked out, Marcus lunged toward the aisle, tears streaming down his face. "Elena, please, I have nowhere to go. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." She stopped. She turned to him one last time. "Do you remember what you said to me, Marcus?" she asked softly. "When I left the office," Marcus sobbed, shaking his head. "You said, 'You're the past. Stay there.'" Elena put her sunglasses on. "Goodbye, Marcus." She walked out the doors, the cameras flashing, leaving him surrounded by the wreckage of his own greed. 5 years is a long time in the world of business, but it is an eternity in the life of a broken man. New York City had moved on. The name Nebula Systems was a footnote in business textbooks, a cautionary tale about poor risk management and the dangers of alienating key stakeholders. The company had been liquidated, the code assets bought for scraps by Titan Global, and the office space turned into a yoga studio. For Elena, however, 5 years had been a metamorphosis. She sat in the back of her chauffeured Maybach reviewing the speech she was about to give. She was no longer just the heiress who had returned. She was the chairwoman of the Vanderquilt Foundation and the CEO of a new venture capital firm, Phoenix Rise, dedicated to funding underrepresented entrepreneurs, people who had brilliant minds but lacked the right image. She looked out the window as the city lights blurred by. She was happy, truly happy. Beside her sat Julian Thorne. They weren't just business partners anymore. They were husband and wife. Julian adored her not for her money, but for her sharp wit, her kindness, and the quiet strength she had shown when the world was watching. "You nervous?" Julian asked, taking her hand. His touch was warm, grounding. "A little," Elena admitted. "It's the Golden Horizon Gala. Everyone will be there, even the critics." "Let them look," Julian smiled. "They're looking at the woman who turned a family legacy into a global force for good. You're the guest of honor, Elle. Own it." The car slowed down. They had arrived at the Waldorf Astoria. The red carpet was rolled out, the flashbulbs were popping, and the energy was palpable. Meanwhile, inside the ballroom, the atmosphere was frantic for a different set of people. "Move it! Sterling Table 4 needs water, and don't mess up the silverware placement again, or you're out." Marcus flinched as the floor manager barked at him. "Yes, sir," Marcus mumbled, grabbing a silver pitcher of ice water. Marcus Sterling looked nothing like the tech CEO who had once graced the cover of Wired magazine. His hair was thinning and gray at the temples. His face was gaunt, lined with the stress of bankruptcy hearings, debt collectors, and the crushing weight of regret. After the lawsuit, he had lost everything. The legal fees had drained his remaining savings. He had been blacklisted from the tech industry. No one wanted to hire the man who had publicly humiliated the Vanderquilt heiress. He had bounced from sales jobs to retail and finally to catering. It was a cruel twist of fate that he was working the Golden Horizon Gala. He knew this crowd. 5 years ago, he would have been sitting at table 1 drinking the vintage champagne. Tonight he was pouring it. He adjusted his bow tie, which felt like a noose. Just get through the night, he told himself. Make the tips. Pay the rent on the studio apartment in Queens. Don't make eye contact. He moved through the tables, filling glasses, keeping his head down. He felt invisible. To these people, the titans of industry, he was just a pair of hands holding a tray. He was exactly what he had accused Elena of being, the help. The irony burned in his gut like acid. Then the music swelled. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest of honor, the recipient of the Visionary of the Year Award, Mrs. Elena Vanderquilt Thorne." The room erupted in applause. Marcus froze. The pitcher of water shook in his hand. He looked toward the stage. Elena walked out. She was radiant. She wore a gown of shimmering gold, looking like a statue of victory come to life. She walked with a grace that commanded the room. She stood at the podium, smiling, her eyes bright. "Thank you," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. 5 years ago I started over. I learned that true value isn't found in stock prices or exit strategies. It's found in loyalty, in integrity, and in the courage to be yourself even when others try to make you feel small. Marcus felt like the floor was opening up to swallow him. Every word she spoke felt like a direct indictment of his soul. He tried to retreat to the kitchen to hide, but the floor manager grabbed his arm. "Where are you going? The champagne toast is starting. Get the bottles to the VIP table now." I can't," Marcus stammered. "Please send someone else." "Everyone else is busy. Do it, Sterling, or don't bother coming back tomorrow." Marcus swallowed hard. He had no choice. He needed this job. He grabbed a bottle of Dom Perignon and a towel. He walked toward the VIP table 1. As he approached, he saw them. Sophia Kensington was there laughing at something Julian said, and there was Elena sitting in the center glowing with happiness. Marcus's hands were trembling so badly the bottle rattled against the glasses as he set them down. "Careful," Julian said, not looking up, focused on his wife. "Sorry, sir," Marcus whispered. At the sound of his voice, Elena froze. She slowly turned her head. The noise of the gala seemed to fade away. For a moment it was just the two of them, the billionaire philanthropist and the waiter, the ex-wife and the ex-husband. Elena looked at his uniform. She looked at the lines on his face, the fear in his eyes, the utter defeat in his posture. Sophia noticed the tension and looked up. Her eyes went wide. She opened her mouth to say something likely, something scathing, but Elena raised a hand to stop her. "It's okay, Sophie," Elena said softly. Marcus couldn't breathe. He waited for the anger. He waited for her to scream, to have him fired, to humiliate him the way he had humiliated her in the lobby that day. He waited for her to tell the whole table who he was. "Hello, Marcus," Elena said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was just sad. "Elena," Marcus choked out. I'm just... "It's okay," she repeated. She looked at him. Really looked at him. And in that moment Marcus realized the worst punishment wasn't her anger. It was her indifference. She didn't hate him. She had simply outgrown him so completely that he was no longer a villain in her story. He was just a ghost. "I hope you're doing well," Elena said politely. Marcus looked around at the opulence he had lost, the woman he had thrown away. "I'm surviving." "Survival is a good start," she said. She turned back to Julian, dismissing Marcus not with cruelty but with closure. She placed her hand on Julian's arm, and the love between them was so bright it hurt Marcus to look at it. Marcus finished pouring the champagne. He felt tears pricking his eyes. He turned to leave. "Wait," Elena said. Marcus stopped. Elena reached into her clutch. She pulled out a checkbook. She wrote something quickly, tore out the check, and folded it. She stood up and walked over to him. She tucked the folded check into the pocket of his waiter's jacket. "For the service," she said. "And Marcus," he looked up, meeting her eyes one last time. "Don't let the past define you," she said, echoing the words he had once used as a weapon against her. "You can still change, but you have to do the work." She sat back down. Marcus walked away. He walked through the kitchen, out the back door, and into the cold alleyway behind the hotel. He leaned against the brick wall, sliding down until he hit the pavement. With shaking hands, he unfolded the check. He expected $1, or maybe $200,000, a mockery of the settlement. But it wasn't either. It was a check for $50,000. And in the memo line written in her elegant script were the words, "Tuition. Go learn something new." She hadn't given him a fortune. She hadn't restored his life. She had given him exactly enough to go back to school, to start over, to actually build something real this time, instead of riding on someone else's coattails. It was an act of grace he didn't deserve. Marcus held the check to his chest and wept. He cried for the man he used to be, for the arrogance that had cost him everything, and for the realization that the woman he had called small town was the biggest person he would ever know. Inside the ballroom, the music played on. Elena didn't look back at the kitchen door. She raised her glass to her husband, to her best friend Sophia, and to the future. She had won. Not just the game of wealth, but the game of life. She had kept her soul intact. And as the orchestra swelled, Elena Marie Vanderquilt Thorne smiled, finally completely free. And that is the story of how Marcus learned the hardest lesson of his life: never underestimate someone just because they choose to be humble. He thought he was signing away a burden, but he was actually signing away his destiny. It's a powerful reminder that true worth isn't about the clothes you wear or the title on your business card. It's about your character. Marcus chased the image of success and lost everything, while Elena stayed true to herself and gained the world. What would you have done if you were Elena? Would you have given him that check at the end, or would you have let him suffer? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma, betrayal, and ultimate redemption, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We have a crazy tale coming up next week about a landlord who evicted a tenant only to realize she was his new boss. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.